Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
It's good to be back after a couple of weeks. It's been busy, we've got lots of things to do, don't we, Steve? It's, we always have to try and find time to get these things done, but it's good to be back. Something different, I think, today, and just spoiler alert at the top, we're not going to go generational ranty here. It's not this isn't really about what we're doing here before, so halt your comments or whatever if you think we're doing that. But I guess it's just something that's been on my mind, and I know that you've thought about it as well, Steve. It's about generational change in the workplace and how things have gone over time, especially compared to when we entered the workforce, compared to how younger generations are coming into the workforce now, expectations around what jobs are, what your experience is like at them, what you're getting out of it, et cetera, et cetera. And, it can be cliched to say that, and again, every time, an older generation talks about a younger generation, there's always like some sort of critical commentary made, and that's been time immemorial, these young kids today, and what are they thinking? That's always been a part of it. But I think there's an additional layer in what's happening now. I could go off on a rant about social media and the algorithm and its impacts. I think we've already done that quite a few times already. But I think in this particular case, when you're talking about the workplace and expectations, how you see yourself, what you want to do, how you want to go up the ladder, if you want to call it, or just get better pay, better conditions, or you want to work at a company that shares the same values as you. These are all things that are sort of something that's come to the forefront. But I just wonder, what concerns me with some of the things I'm seeing is more that rotting that occurs in thinking based on what they're seeing on, particularly anyone that's more tuned into the algorithm, especially from the younger generational point of view, and that what they're seeing is not matching up with reality. They go into the workforce and a bit like the laws of gravity, physics of the universe, doesn't matter how much you want to try and change it, it's still going to come in with the same outcome, because that's just how it is. And it's not that it's a bad thing. I think it's just that difference between the expectation and what actually ends up happening, the lived reality of having a job, going to work, etc. Anyway, that's kind of a long-winded way of me just sort of setting everything up here, but it's just kind of interesting that I think there's like a qualitative, well, if you want to call it that, difference in their approach, but it's coming from influences that are really unhealthy, especially from a technological point of view.
Well, I think so. That's why I was surprised when you said you're not going to rant about social media, which leaves me free to do it. But I mean, look, I totally agree. I think it's ridiculous to beat up on a generation over these sorts of things. I mean, I was young once. You probably were too, Ben. And, but things were different then. And I think people weren't different. I think people were largely the same. The human population and certainly our society hasn't changed markedly, more diversity, but, the outlooks haven't changed. But what has changed around us is how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive our self-worth. And that's been very much distorted by social media. So in our day, Ben, you look the way you did, you got your hair cut, hopefully not with a bowl, and, you went off to school or work and you accepted that school or work was what you had to do. And particularly work was about earning money. And no one expected to enjoy work. You just went to work, you did it, you got money for it. And then eventually, after a long time, even when house prices for everyone were $30,000 for a house, it still took you 25 years to save a deposit and pay it off. So, things have always been long term. These sorts of goals have always been long term. And I think what we're seeing now is just this distortion where people going to work, people now the young people are a lot more conscious about the environment, a lot more conscious about ethics and doing the right thing. And we're constantly having promoted everything. And you think about what social media does is it gives the idea of perfection, whether it's body image, whether it's career, lifestyle, or even whether it's something like what your expectation should be. And the whole world should all be, fairy floss and unicorns and rainbows and whatever else. So when you get to work and the reality is not quite like that, and you've got a manager that, maybe pushes the limits, maybe it looks a bit like bullying, maybe there are things said in the workplace that aren't right, maybe you find out that actually your organisation's commitment to carbon neutrality is dated to 2070. It's little things like that. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. And then, of course, someone you don't think deserves gets a promotion and everything starts to unravel and you're wondering, what am I doing here? You're cynical about the business and you don't have a choice and you can't buy a house and whatever else. So I guess what I'm saying there is, that's the scenario many of these people find themselves in. And I think that that's what's really undermining work. And the worrying thing is if you want to team up social media with another potential evil, is that it means the workforce is ripe for replacement by AI.
Oh, okay. We'll table that for another discussion. I mean, I saw the CBA was talking about the introduction of AI in their thing the other day, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. They're actively talking about it, but we'll leave that for another day. But that's interesting. That I was just going to pick up on that idea of FOMO. Using that example of someone who got the promotion at work that you didn't think should get it, and they're obviously plastering it all over social media, which you can go see because you're still friends with them, because you connect, you have your friends on Facebook or whatever other platform you're on, and then you get resentful, and then it's sort of supercharges your discontent or cynicism about how everything works, and that's on top of everything that is actually working potentially against you in the current environment. So it's bad enough that you've got that, but then to have social media amplify it just really is not helpful whatsoever. And and again, we talk about the nuke switch for social media. You wonder that it should just be done, because FOMO is a killer on so many levels that it's not funny at all.
Oh, it is unbelievable, and there are real struggles for the population. In Australia, we know how hard it is to buy a house. Because prices are so high. It's not so much the prices are high, but what it means is when the prices are high, to get a deposit is hard. And then, you're probably going to have a large mortgage, and that's hard. And that's all the cost of living pressures. So there's a number of steps there. What nobody's saying is the reality is these steps were always there. Fair enough, maybe it is more difficult now, but it was always a long-term proposition. But social media is leading us to believe, I want a house, I should be able to get it tomorrow. And, I want to make some money, I should be able to just do that overnight. And, work should be a holiday. I mean, I'm still laughing in my head about the first time I ever heard a management consultant at work trying to G everyone up with, and then, if you can accept all this, then at work, you can get on to the fun things. And I remember thinking, what's fun at work? So I'm probably just showing my age there.
Nah, surely not. One other thing I wanted to just touch on was this idea of burnout as well, because the report that I think it sort of naturally extends itself from everything we were just saying, because it's like a mental load that goes onto your brain that's additional that you're carrying, and that ultimately will build over time, which leads to burnout. Now, obviously, burnout impacts in different ways onto different people at different tolerance levels, and your experience of it. And it largely, if you wake up in the morning and you almost are filled with existential dread that you don't want to be going into the office. That might be a sign, for instance. But if you've got all of that other crap basically going on top of it, it almost leads to like an impossible scenario there for, especially for younger people who are just trying to find their way and their place, and what they want to do with everything that they've got going. So,
yeah, that's right. I mean, it's and I think this is I personally, and we were talking about this before, I think burnout's very poorly termed. It's something much deeper than just work. I think it extends into your personal life. But as I say, you know, and you're pointing out there, these are things that you're carrying with you every day, and you're exposed continually having that negative reinforcement if you're on social media. You know, oh, geez, it's going to be another tough day. And then, you know, somebody else has made, you know, 100 million on Bitcoin and I haven't, and someone else has bought a house and I haven't, and someone else got a promotion and I haven't, and I should look better but I don't. You know, these are really, really corrosive, I guess, leads that we constantly get poked with online in the social environment. Not to mention then, you know, threats of war, geopolitical instability. So people are nervous, people are uncertain, and alongside of burnout, uncertainty is the next biggest killer because that creates anxiety. So when you have a mood like that and you've got cost of living pressures thrown in, it's no wonder at all that the younger generations really feel like they're up against it. The only message I'd have for them is there might be some aspects in life where you're more up against it than I was, but really as you said, the physical laws haven't changed, and they've always sort of been like this for every generation.
And just wanted to finish up on just that point of just global events, and also just this idea that you know, we didn't grow up with a feed that was, you know, essentially 24/7 of bad news coming into our eyeballs all the time. That happens now. You know, even if you wanted to be updated on the news 24/7, it was very difficult back in the day, because essentially you either got it on the 6 o'clock news or you read a newspaper, and you would have to, you know, physically tune in or, you know, go buy something for that. Whereas, you know, now it's like a 24/7 feed on your phone, and, you know, you would think the world's going to crap. There's no other way to look at it when you look at what's getting fed to people now.
Well, and that's a really good point, because as you said, you know, you'd be exposed to it maybe twice a day in the past, and that would be when you chose to interact with the news via paper or TV. Whereas today, if you're on socials, if one bad thing happens, it'll be replayed over and over and over again. You'll see it 6, 7, 8, 12 times in one day, and it'll seem much worse than maybe it really is. So there are a lot of challenges for those younger generations, and it's very hard to find the positive reinforcement that people need to get over, you know, I guess effectively worries, anxieties, concerns, depression. All of them are much harder to get out of now, because you're constantly being reinforced that you're not good enough, and your position's hopeless. And it's not true, people.
Absolutely.
Believe in being human.
Well, that's a perfect sentiment to finish up on. So thanks again, Steve. Another good chat, but yeah, it'll be hopefully it gets better at some point. And I don't know, you know, again, I'm hoping for the nuke button for that sort of thing. I like my phone. I like, you know, it takes great shots. It's great for reading content or watching content in terms of old school videos, I guess. But social media is somewhere I don't go.
Amen to that.
Absolutely. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you next time.